This meeting is now called to order. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. For roll call, everyone is present this evening. We will now take a moment of reflection and respect, please. Thank you. Next item up is confirmation of agenda.
That council adopts the agenda for the meeting of May 17th, 2021 as presented.
Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Charlton and Councillor Chapman. Are there any questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest this evening? Okay. I don't see anyone. We have no delegations and public meetings this evening. So the next item is minutes to approve.
That council approves the following minutes. Regular virtual meeting of council held on May 3rd, 2021.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Barber and Councillor Oslach. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. The next item up is the consent agenda.
That item 7.1 to 7.14 of the May 17th, 2021 consent agenda be adopted as presented with actions to be taken as noted.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Ham. Are there any items that council would like to discuss? Councillor Charlton first, and then Councillor Chapman, and then Councillor Ham. Go ahead, Councillor Charlton. I think you're on mute, Councillor Charlton.
There. There we go. Yeah. Through your worship, I was just wondering if we're going to be sending a letter of support for the emergency phone number 988 for mental health. Thank you.
If you don't mind, Councillor Charlton, I'm going to turn that over to Josh. Josh, you and I had a discussion about that. Could you give more information to Councillor Charlton, please?
Through your worship and to Councillor Charlton, the agenda and some of the correspondence that we've got on the correspondence consent agenda is a little bit dated just based on when we publish it. It's my understanding at this point that that bill that was before the House has been passed at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Chapman, you're next, please.
Through your worship, that was my item that I wanted pulled as well. So my question is, if it's been passed, is there any idea when it will be implemented?
And again, I'll have to turn this over to either Andy or Josh, please.
Through your worship and to Councillor Chapman, staff will keep an eye on any additional correspondence that comes through with respect to that item. We certainly could still issue a letter of support, perhaps just including local politicians at this point, and any further correspondence that is sent to staff will be included on a future consent agenda for council's information.
I like that idea.
Okay. Councillor Ham, you're next.
Thank you. Through your worship. 7.7 on the Blue Water reopening. I just want to comment that really hearing how difficult this is for small businesses, and that wanting to see what it's going to look like for everybody to be able to reopen. I just really wanted to comment that it really, I think, is probably heavy for all small municipalities right now, and all people that as we wait and see what's going to happen. So I just wanted to comment that it was I was in support of that.
Okay, Councillor Ham, and would you like us to write a letter in support or
Yes.
what? Okay, I'll turn that over to Josh. Is that possible then, Josh?
Through your worship, and to Councillor Ham, just for specificity, are you looking for us just to write a letter of support directly to the town of Blue Mountains and perhaps include the Premier of Ontario?
Thank you, Josh. You always have a great way of saying those. Yes, that's what I mean. Thank you.
Okay. What does the rest of council, are you in favor of doing that? I see everyone's head nodding. Are there any other questions or concerns about the consent agenda? Deputy Mayor Andrews?
Thank you, through your worship. I just would like to draw attention to 7.4, the Aylmer Police 2020 annual report. There's a lot of really good detail in this report, a lot of effort, and you know, it familiarizes everyone with the staff, you know, everything that they've done throughout the year, the mission, the vision, and the 2020 strategic planning results is very detailed. It's well worth the read. It's a lot to go through, but it's well worth going through just to see throughout the year everything that has been done condensed into this report. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention.
And thank you for that, Deputy Mayor Andrews. And I concur with you. I was actually going to mention that kudos to this report because it's amazing and there is a lot of valuable information in the report.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or concerns? Councillor Charlton.
Through your worship, I read the report too, and it's a great report. Just a couple of things stood out for me. The police have had a very trying year, but they did treat everyone with dignity and respect, and they do serve with honor and integrity. And those two phrases were just paramount. And so great work for the police. Thank you.
And thank you for that, Councillor Charlton. That's an excellent comment. Are there any other comments or concerns? Did you have any, Councillor Oslach? Okay. All right, Josh, could you reread the resolution then, because I know it's changed a bit?
Certainly, through your worship, with your permission, we'll start just with the resolution, sort of save and accept the Blue Mountain and the 988 hotline number.
Okay.
Just going to pull those 7.5. So it's that item 7.1 to 7.14, save and accept items 7.5 and 7.7 of the May 17th, 2021 consent agenda be adopted as presented with actions to be taken as noted. And that was moved by Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Ham.
Okay, thank you for that, Josh. So with no further questions or comments, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We'll move into action items, and the first report is OPNS 0921.
That report, OPNS 921, entitled Water Storage Facility Infrastructure Review, be received for information, and that council directs staff to initiate the process to replace the town's existing water storage facility.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Oslach. I'm going to turn this over to Rob at this point, and maybe he can give us some further details to the report.
Thank you, Your Worship. As council will recall, they directed staff to prepare a discussion paper on the water storage facility here at the town during the budget deliberations. So I'd first like to mention that I didn't do or undertake any significant modeling with respect to capacity or anything like that. First of all, we don't have the software or the capacity here at the town. So it's based on my observation, having run the system, having run similar systems, and sort of a review of all the relevant information that I could. And if when we look at the report, a couple of things that jumped out. There's two main systems that the town is responsible for, of course, the water and the sanitary. And if we're going to discuss one, I felt it prudent to discuss sort of the other one at the same time. As we all know, as we use up our allocation, it's not finite. So at some point, we're going to have to do something with our system. So we wanted to discuss them in context of each other moving forward, sort of as a priority. I think the town has been well served where other municipalities have not. As we all know, the land use planning really has restricted development in the recent years to those municipalities or those lands that have both water and sewer. Especially with the Walkerton crisis and those crises, the province wanted to see development on full services. So those have really served Aylmer well, where other municipalities have sort of struggled to continue to grow. And then when I looked at both of those services, sort of the sanitary and the water, for the reasons listed in the report, I think the lagoons have continued some capacity. We've got an opportunity to do some more optimization at the lagoons. The town has sort of land in reserve to the west of the existing intermittent sand filters for the expansion of those sand filters. And then the other thing I sort of looked at as well, there has been a push by municipalities to allow development on partial services. So when I think about partial services, if the province ever was to lessen the rules, so to speak, I can only imagine they're only going to lessen it with respect to sanitary. If they allow development on, let's say, robust residential systems, if something should go wrong, they can issue orders for people to redo their residential sanitary systems. If they let development occur with private wells and something was to go through a plume through the aquifer or something, it would be a really difficult way to resolve it. So if the province ever did change, I would suspect that they might allow a little leeway with sanitary where they're not likely to water. So for those reasons, I've prioritized the sanitary less than the water. And that's if we have to look at the two. I'll just check my notes here. Because of the location, the facility type, and the operational parameters of this water tower, I think we're probably best served to look at replacing the existing standpipe for all the reasons that are kind of listed in the report there. It's a very unique system, capacity-wise, and how the tower is located, where it's located in town. And also it's reliant on the secondary system, that Aylmer area secondary water supply system factors into our capacity and our ability to meet the demands. And so it's a little bit unique in that respect. I mentioned in the report also that I think some work has been done in the past. Previous staff had looked at possible locations for the water tower. So I don't think this is something new. I think they've given it some thought as to, where should we probably look to relocate. All of that will be finalized if council decides to concur with the report through the environmental assessment process. You have to do some water modeling to find out where's the best site, where should it be located, what's the configuration of our water mains that's best suited in those areas. And then I also mentioned a little bit of the financial plan. We're right in the process now of doing our water rate study. We have to do a 10-year financial plan to renew our water license for the ministry. They've granted us an extension while we finish that. And we're also into the development charges. A water tower, given the nature of and the breadth of that project, long-term borrowing, that's kind of what long-term borrowing is really for. You're not using long-term borrowing to buy a snowplow that's going to be out in 10 years. When you do this long-term debt for some sort of substantial project like a water tower, that's sort of the ideal. It allows the water rates to, you can finance it over 20, 30 years. I won't speak for the treasurer though. Once they'll figure out, the treasurer will definitely have to look into what's the best way and probably be back. And I'll leave that to the finance people to present to you. If council decides to go down this path, what's the best way for council to finance a significant capital project like this? So, and if the last part is the replacement schedule. If council decides to go down this path, it's a large undertaking. It's a multi-year undertaking. The EAs take time there's a significant public engagement. You want to make sure your water modeling is right, your capacity is there. You look at your planning horizon. If you want to make sure that if the water tower is going to be there for 50 years, you've got a really good 30, 40, 50-year planning projection as well on that stuff. So it's not something that you decide today and it goes up tomorrow. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rob. Councillor Oslands, do you have a question?
Yes, Your Worship, to Rob. I'm making a mistake. A couple of years ago, we had an estimate for a new standpipe. I forget what it was. Do you recollect?
I don't recollect. I know you're going to be probably north of 5 million, and probably with the construction prices right now, I'm even hesitant to say that. That would be one of the first things that the engineer planner could tell us, what type of tower. It also depends on capacity too. How big we go increases the cost.
And the second question is, at one time we were going to put the new standpipe in Chip Place Crescent next to the new Public Works building. Was that still on the books?
I have seen that plan as well. I would defer and say I probably would like sufficient water modeling to look at the location of our large diameter mains in town and then where their potential growth would be. But I did see that as well. That was early on a potential site. Well,
The present standpipe is in sort of in a valley, and I noticed that your report says it should be on higher ground.
Elevation is key to pressure. There's no secret. The more you can get that up in the air, the better off the system pressures are. And that's one of the challenges with the existing standpipe is the bottom portion of that standpipe is just storage. It doesn't provide the pressure to the town that the town needs.
Yeah. Thank you, Rob.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Barber?
Thank you, Your Worship. To Rob, there isn't an awful lot of money set aside to begin the planning process. Do you have the resources to at least get started on the background information?
I believe we do. Just preliminary discussions with the treasurer. We'd probably have to borrow those from ourselves, and those would be part of the future capital costs. We also have a little bit of money to refurbish the existing tower. I would like to go, once council makes this decision, of the tower, the existing tower will need a little work to maintain the service and make sure we continue to provide quality water. But let's say, for example, maybe we don't have to take it right back to bare metal and repaint it all if we know that that tower is going to only be there until we have the new tower. But I see Heather's come on the screen too. Maybe I should defer this question.
Through you, Your Worship, to members of council, we did look at what we have in reserves. There could be a couple $100,000 that we could use to kick this project off, but I did talk to the Infrastructure Ontario contact at the provincial government, and there's other different ways like construction loans that we could look at a fairly low interest rate. So once we're able to get the full amount of the project and the amount of the EAs, then we'll be able to give you a better direction on how we're going to finance everything.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Charlton and then Councillor Chapman.
Through Your Worship, to Rob. So in the tower, I gather there is adequate water there. It's a pressure issue if for the bottom end, but we do have pumps to look after that pressure issue if it came to that. And and the other thing with the standpipe is if they shut some apparatus down in St. Thomas, we have to supply like back pressure, and that can be an issue as well.
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Charlton, yeah, when they'll fire up the pumps to fill up our tower. Our tower calls for the fill, so those two Elmer pumps will kick on and start to fill the tower. They'll open the valve. It's a 13-kilometer surge of water starts heading towards the tower. Then they'll shut off when our tower reaches the right level. When they shut off, the only thing back pressurizing that system is Elmer Tower. The Elmer Tower is integral to that secondary transmission line.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Chapman?
I have two questions, if that's okay, Your Worship, though, through you. My first one is grants. I'm sure there's grants out there that can help us along this process. Or, I mean, I'm sure we'll look into them. So that's the first part. And the second part is what you just said about our standpipe now being an integral part of the system. So with a new tower, do we still need the existing tower? We did discuss keeping the existing tower and building the new tower so that we would have even more capacity. Is that like a pipe dream or is that possible?
Through your worship to Councillor Chapman, that's something that I have the engineers to look at it. The tower itself acts like a surge tank, if you will. It's quite unique. You've got 13 kilometers of water and it's like a water hammer headed to the tower, and it'll go up the tower and surge back. And there's also a surge anticipation valve. It's kind of like a check valve, but a little more sophisticated back at the Elgin, the EMPS plant there, that anticipates that surge. It's an interesting system to look at overall, and I really would defer to an engineer to look at what's the best thing, whether that has to stay in just simply as a surge tower, or maybe completely remove it and let the new tower act as the surge tower as well.
And just to add as well, Councillor Chapman, we are going to look at grant funding. There is infrastructure funds still available. That project's still ongoing. So what we do need though is we're going to need to get the RFP out for design, so we have something to actually submit for it. And I think it's in the town's best interest to proceed regardless of whether or not we get grant funding. But I certainly am hopeful we will get some grant funding.
Councillor Charlton?
Through your worship, if push comes to shove, can we build another cell for the sewage lagoons, or are we going to have to go to a sewage treatment plant?
Through your worship to Councillor Charlton, that would be something we'd have to work through with the Ministry of the Environment as well. There is a reserved land there that's in line with the intermittent sand filters. We'd have to do a sort of a capacity study, satisfy their requirements. My preference would be probably to expand the sand filters in the lagoons. They run really great. They're cost effective. A plant has to address or deal with all the flows that come into it right at once, unlike the lagoons. There is a hybrid. There's flows that are captured by the lagoons and then processed by the plant. That would be an EA process with MECP.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Oslach?
Yes, Your Worship, to Rob. The third lagoon is very low, and it's hardly been used in the past. Is that still the case?
Through your worship to Councillor Oslach, cell 4 over the last 8 months has been empty. We managed to drain it right down and it stayed empty over the winter. We've now flooded it because we had some growth in the bottom, some grasses, if you will, and you're best to put them underwater before they become an issue. Cell 4 is also a polishing cell. So if we have to discharge from cell 2 and we have to blend, we can pull from cell 4. Cell 3, we got as low as we could today, or this year. The problem with getting below, let's say, a meter and a half of effluent in that cell is the wind action picks it up as it blows across, and all of a sudden our total suspended solids it creeps up and it goes past what we're allowed to discharge. So we've had it as low, probably 1.2, 1.3. I think it's hovering around 2.2 right now, if I had to guess.
I've been out there a number of times, and cell 4 is a lot of islands in it, and it becomes a bird sanctuary actually. But I think that we have a lot of reserve on our lagoons as present. Don't you think so?
I do. I have asked Aqua because they run the lagoons there. They've got some staff that are really skilled at lagoons. They'll be bringing a proposal to council in the very near future with some of their recommendations and to look at optimizing those lagoons. One of the challenges on the lagoons right now is the C of A's, the orders by which you run them have been, one has built on top of another one on top of another one. I feel that by sort of engaging the ministry and consolidating the C of A's, taking that, there's a way to optimize it. Right now, there's sort of limitations in there that don't make any real sense. We have in recent years applied to go past those limitations, and we've never had a problem. The effluent coming out of the sand filters was sufficient to allow that. So I think there's a few things that we can do. So I would say yes, Councillor Oshlack. I think we can optimize those and make them a little more efficient.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none. Oh, sorry, Councillor Chapman, you have a question?
Oh, it was just, I think it's a good idea to move forward with it. We need to look to the future. And I think that this is a big step towards that. So I very much think that we need to move forward with this.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Are there any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Rob. Great report.
Thank you.
The next report up is Finance 0121.
That report, Finance 0121, entitled Registered Properties Due for Tax Sale, be received for information. And that council authorized the treasurer to prepare and publish the necessary documents with Tricky Tax Team with respect to Ontario Regulation 18103, municipal tax sale rules, to allow for the sale of registered properties that are due.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Oslatch. Heather, do you have anything extra to add to your report? You've explained it quite clearly, but you may want to give us a bit more information, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. To members of council, basically we have about $55,000 worth of tax in arrears that we're trying to collect, including interest and penalties. And we just wanted to engage with the Tricky Tax Team since they had already started this process in 2019. Basically, this is our last resort to collect our tax in arrears. And there would have been several unsuccessful attempts to contact the landowners prior to the registration. So that's all I wanted to add, but if there's any questions, I can try to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Are there any questions for Heather? Councillor Chapman and then Councillor Charlton.
Through you, Your Worship, I'm not familiar with this process. So these homes are in arrears. So are they also, like, are people living in these homes?
A couple of the properties are vacant land. I think one of the properties might be abandoned, and we're not sure about the other property, if somebody's actually living in it or not.
Okay. And when it goes up for sale, then they're evicted or whatever.
Yeah, so we'll put up the bids publicly. We'll be opening all the bids publicly. Basically, the Tricky Tax Team puts together the proposal. They send out all the information. They put the advertisements through the papers. And then at that time, the successful bid will take over the property, and they would be responsible for carrying out all those arrangements.
Thank you.
Councillor Charlton.
Through Your Worship, so there's two properties there that are vacant lots. So maybe one is sold and one is, well, they both must be sold if they're in arrears. So somebody bought them years ago, didn't pay taxes and didn't build a house. Is that the scenario?
That's what it appears to be from the MPAC aerial that we could see.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Heather, the existing property owners can stop the tax sale process by becoming current on outstanding taxes. Is that not correct?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And thank you, Heather. The next report is CAO 1921.
That report CAO 1921 respecting requests for proposals, realty services be received for information, and that council authorize an exemption to the procurement process to permit the issuance of a modified request for proposals, RFP for realty services, and that rolls 3411020, 65300, 3411 020 65400 and 3411 020 65500 on Leslie Street be declared surplus to municipal needs.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Deputy Mayor Andrews. Andy, did you want to give any more information about this report?
Thank you, Your Worship. This report seeks to secure a real estate agent or firm to make proposals upon listing prices, listing services, and commission for the sale of surplus properties. It's presented in draft form tonight as council may want to make changes. The largest piece of land being considered is the new White Street industrial area. This is to see if there is a large employer that wishes to purchase a substantial part of these lands and would be our anchor tenant there. The town of Aylmer is particularly attractive to such potential industry as we are a very safe community and we have a strong local workforce. So if an anchor tenant does not appear, then the town would proceed to develop the lot as an overall business park. However, if somebody comes in and indicates they want, say, 20 or 30 acres, we would try to work with them and make that happen before we divvied up the rest of it. So that's kind of what we're seeking for White Street. As you'll recall, we have that current 5-year lease for farming there that we can cancel at any time with reasonable notice. But we would like to make sure that they get the crop off in any year because otherwise we have to compensate them for that. This report also sees some lots at the end of Leslie Street declared surplus to municipal needs and to be sold. The largest remaining land holdings of the town not considered within this report are green buffer areas behind subdivisions. The challenge with these properties is that residents often treat them as an extension of their backyard. As a result, we aren't really utilizing the land or making it readily accessible to the public. So staff will continue to look at options for these lands, but overall it might not be worth the time and cost incurred to ever dispose of these lands. It is, however, important to routinely highlight that the municipality may decide to do something with these portions of the land in the future, be it a walking trail or to enhance conservation efforts, a park, or even a dog park. So just to highlight that if residents have ideas or concerns, we'd like them to start sharing that dialogue with the town on that. And with that, I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Councillor Charlton.
Through your worship, I drove down Leslie Street today and looked at those 3 lots. They're full of trees and it drops off. I think there might even be a pond at the bottom end. And you can tell that why they haven't been lapped up for residential use already. Thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Andrews.
Thank you, through your worship. So the report, I guess this is for Andy, CAO Grizel. So the report is seeking exemption from the procurement process. What is the basis behind that? Sorry.
Sure. Good question, Deputy Mayor Andrews. So usually we do a 2-envelope process for a process like this, but because we're actually seeking individual recommendations to council on listing price for each property and individual recommendations for commission on each property. We aren't requiring another envelope, so they aren't getting any fees paid up front by the municipality. The only way that a real estate broker would make money is to actually sell a piece of land for us.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Josh, could you move the report up? I do have a question about one of some of the properties on there, please. I do have a question about 59 Talbot Street East and 6771 Talbot Street East. And the reason that kind of concerns me is the fact that the town have been trying to sell those properties, and I know we've been actively pursuing that. So I was just wondering, is it feasible that we should try to list it with a real estate company now, or should we continue with our efforts? Because I know that you've been receiving a lot of interest, if I'm not mistaken.
Through your worship, to your worship. Yeah, you are correct. I do think that there is a potential for council to go either way on that. You could ask that it not be listed in the RFP with some confidence. The way the RFP is worded, we could pull it later if there was a decision. So either option is before council.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. Are there any further comments? Deputy Mayor Andrews.
Sorry, through your worship. Are any of these properties, with the ones that we are aware of because of recent conversations, are any of these other properties already tied up with offers, or I thought Progress Drive was one of those that was a potential, had a potential offer or something on it, or all of these free and clear at this point to list and go ahead?
All of these currently right now are free to go ahead and list. There is one that I believe closes in July. So we may have another additional one to add afterwards. And we do have some other large scale developers contacting us with some interest in sections of the 45 Progress Drive area as well too. So there is potential for future purchases already.
Great, thank you.
So I guess the question for council is, are you comfortable with leaving all these properties in and being listed, or should we be considering maybe leaving a couple of them out and listing them maybe at a later date? I was going to suggest that for the two properties that I mentioned, we leave it the way it is till possibly the end of June, because I know that our staff have been very, very busy discussing these properties with potential purchasers. Maybe we could wait till the end of June, and if those particular individuals aren't interested at that point, then we could list them. I don't know what council think, but it is a savings. I mean, if we're already doing the work and we've got the potential purchasers lined up, I think our staff are, capable of continuing to, work on this, these deals. So I don't know. It's up to council if you want to pull those two, or if you just want to leave them in. Councillor Barber and then Councillor Oslach.
Thank you, Worship. It would be my thought that we leave them in for now. And if there's a sincere interest in any of the properties, that they be withdrawn if a satisfactory offer happens to come in.
Okay. You're next, Councillor Oslach.
Yes, your worship. I agree with Councillor Barber, and Andy said we could go either way on these properties. It's open, so we could withdraw them at any time or add them at any time. So I'm in agreement with Councillor Barber.
Okay, and sorry, did you have further comments, Councillor Oslach?
No, I don't have any.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Andrews, did you have your hand up?
I did. Thank you, sir, your worship. I think we should leave them in. And then if they're, we can always exclude them if we did decide to list. That is an option. When you do list, you can exclude. So, I mean, why not just do it all in one fair swoop and just exclude where we need to?
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds fair. It was just a thought that I was hoping we could have a conversation, and we did. So I think that was a good conversation. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. That's good. Thank you. The next item up is report CAO 2021.
That report CAO 2021 respecting special events on public and private lands bylaw be received as information, and that the special events policy bylaw be presented, my apologies, Council, and that staff be directed to provide updates and modifications throughout the summer of 2021, given the ongoing emerging COVID-19 situation.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Charlton. I'll turn this over to you, Andy, and you can further explain to council about this report.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report serves two purposes. The first and most important is really to highlight the town's desire to encourage new and exciting festivals and events following the COVID-19 pandemic. The second is to establish a formal special events application process. By coincidence, the City of Toronto made a similar statement this past Friday to what we're suggesting in this report, and that is just essentially that there should be no special events occurring until September. That's also what we're suggesting, as otherwise we'd really need to start working with event organizers now to ensure a seamless event. So I think it's safe to say, but one of the reasons why the recommendation requires that we report back throughout the summer is if that changes, we can bring an update back to council. There's an expectation that the provincial government will be providing grant funding opportunities for tourism incentives this year and into 2022. So the town wants to encourage community organizers to start considering what festivals they might want to hold. The town very much wants to be supportive of such endeavors, and we would like to begin those conversations sooner rather than later. So at this time, there's really nothing that we're deeming as being off the table. So if somebody wants to organize a concert or with a beer tent, a fair, a community yard sale, we're open to assisting organizers throughout the process from step A to Z. So today, that's really the message that we want to send. Even if you've never held a special event before, if you can get a pool of volunteers together and can dedicate your time and energy to doing something special for the town, we want to do our best to assist and make that happen. We want more events to celebrate Aylmer and show everyone our community pride, essentially. And if things open up sooner than anticipated, again, we will look to allow special events earlier, but we don't want groups to invest time now and then have us cancel things on August long weekend or anything like that. It's just, they'll feel dejected if we go down that process. So we want this to be positive for everybody and to deliver a lot of new exciting things for the community in the next year.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Are there any questions or comments? Well, I'm going to comment and say I think it's a great report, and I just love it that we're going to accommodate people and we're going to be trying to bring in more festivities and festivals and events for the town and a farmer's market. People have been crying for years for that, and I think if we can accommodate them, it's just going to make our community even that much better. So kudos to staff. Great report. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship. You mentioned the farmer's market. There is a fruit and vegetable guy at the old farmer's market every Tuesday from 7 to 2. He showed up again. So it's beginning. It's beginning.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Oslach. Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick comment. It's much more progressive to be proactive rather than reactive, and it's good to see that that staff are thinking outside the box, and I appreciate that.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is Report Clerk 1921.
That Report Clerk 1921 respecting the communications plan update be received as information, and that council endorse the strategic communications plan for 2021 to 2022 as attached to Report Clerk 1921.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Deputy Mayor Andrews. Josh, did you want to go over this report with the council, please?
Certainly, through your worship and two members of council, when council opted to restructure the administrative assistant position following a retirement back in 2020, one of the key objectives of that process was to include a communications component to the new position. So as a result, council approved the creation of a deputy clerk communications coordinator role. Owen Jagger, the town deputy clerk communications coordinator, has taken the lead on the development of this plan. And based on communication, it's based on communications plans and best practices that are used by similar comparable municipalities and other public sector organizations. The key objective of this plan that's before council tonight has to do with establishing a baseline and offering clear deliverables for the town communications team. With council endorsement, staff are prepared to implement this plan immediately, and it's anticipated that a communications review, which will consider learned experiences, stakeholder engagement, and a public survey, would be brought to council for an update in 2022. So this would be a living document. What's before council tonight sets the baseline and offers staff the opportunity to continue doing research and establishing best practices for moving forward. For 2021 to 22, the plan includes frameworks and goals for Facebook, Instagram, and a Twitter presence. It's anticipated that these communications platforms would allow the town to deliver more convenient and accessible messaging to a wider audience of residents in addition to traditional forms of communication that we use now, such as newsprint, the municipal website, etc. It should be noted that stakeholder engagement and program evaluation are both built into this plan, with staff intending to present future plans using measurable data and public input to allow for that program evaluation. Finally, it should be noted that this plan was produced in accordance with strategic direction set out by council in 2018. More specifically, Pillar 1 involves fostering dynamic, inclusive community, and Pillar 5 regarding public service excellence. And certainly happy to answer any questions that council has this evening about the plan.
Thank you, Josh. Are there any questions for Josh? Councillor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship. I applaud Josh and Owen for bringing this forward. We need this really seriously, and we're lacking in communication in this town. We've been lacking it for a number of years, communicating with the public, and I applaud Josh and Owen for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Oslach. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Charlton.
Through your worship, I'm all for this. My concern is that if you're trying to communicate something, that implies it's kind of a two-way street. And we know that when things get out on social media, some of the coming back comments leave a lot to be desired. And I just wondered if there's any checks and balances for that. Thank you.
Go ahead, Josh, if you have the answer for.
Certainly, through your worship, thank you. And to Councillor Charlton, yeah, I certainly appreciate that comment. At this point, I think the way that we're conceptualizing social media for the town really still has to do with more of an information board style rather than a two-way communication. We've noticed throughout review of best practices of some other municipalities in our area that we would offer, for example, on Facebook, the functionality to share a post or to like and react to a post, whereas we do have the ability to restrict commenting at the outset, and that's our plan at this point. So we wouldn't, people wouldn't be able to comment on our posts. However, they would be able to send us a direct message. And the reason that we're leaving that open is because we've acknowledged that, certain members of the community might feel more comfortable messaging staff via Facebook Messenger than, a conventional email or call to town hall. So really, Councillor Charlton, to answer your question, really not a two-way communication forum yet. But that said, we're certainly open to that in the future. We're just hoping to get it off the ground with this information board style approach, and then to build from there moving forward.
Okay, thank you and good luck.
Councillor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship. I recall in, I think 2014 or 15, we did have a staff on duty for communications, and we didn't have any problem with the public, and It was really, really good. We finally got communication out for the public, and of course she left, and we have not replaced them since then. And I'm sure that Owen would do a good job.
Okay, are there any further questions or comments? Well, thank you, Owen and Josh, for a great report, and I appreciate it. I can say that much. We really need the messaging out there. People really need the information. They're always looking for ways to get information, and I think this is going to be great. So with no further questions or comments, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And the next item up is Report Clerk 2021.
That Report Clerk 2021 entitled Earth Corporation Annual General Meeting Voting Representative and Attendance List be received for information, and that council designates a blank as the town representative for the purpose of casting a vote at the 2021 Earth Annual General Meeting, and further that council directs staff to take the necessary follow-up actions to communicate representative and attendance related information to the corporate secretary prior to the May 17th, 2021 deadline.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Barber and Councillor Ham. Are there any questions or comments? The only thing we really have to do is ask Deputy Mayor Andrews if she will, if we can get her to be the designated person, if she would. She's done it before and she does a great job. That's my opinion, but I'll of course let council chime in on this one, but the deputy mayor has done a great job. Councillor Oslach?
Yes, Your Worship. I'm in agreement with Deputy Mayor Sher.
Are you okay with this, Deputy Mayor Andrews?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I have done this in the past, and I would be happy to continue on. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that, Deputy Mayor Andrews.
Thank you.
Also, just before we vote on this, or if there are any more questions or comments, I just want to remind council that if you do intend on attending this, just let Josh or Andy know after the meeting. There's still time because they can email the secretary at Earth Corp and let her know tonight. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any matters of urgency or new business this evening? Reading of bylaws, third and final reading.
That council gives third and final reading to bylaw 3021, being a bylaw to authorize the signing of a development agreement between Bunkie Holdings, Elgin Incorporated, and the Corporation of the Town of Elmer for the development of lands located at 426 Talbot Street West.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Charlton. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item is suspend procedural policies.
That council suspends the procedural policies to proceed with three readings of bylaw 3221, being a bylaw to authorize the signing of an agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Elmer and Duncor Enterprises, Inc. for the provision of surface treatment services, and bylaw 3321, being a bylaw to adopt a municipal flag policy and delegate authority to staff under the municipal flag policy.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Oslach. Are there any questions or concerns? Councillor Charlton.
Through your worship, I have a little problem with the flag policy, and I was surprised that we're going to give it three readings tonight. I thought maybe two, and then some more thought, but I'm just having some issues with it. I'm all in favor of the declaration. The flag raising, I have an issue with, even if it's corporation flags like Crime Stoppers or whatever. If we don't raise that flag, I wouldn't expect other municipalities to judge us on that. And if they do, that speaks volumes right there. I just don't feel comfortable with the flag raising. The delegation, or the declaration is fine. I just don't feel comfortable with the flag raising. It's a great photo op, and of course it's good for the town. You don't see the flag unless there's some wind. You can't be driving there. It's a busy piece of road to look up to see the flag. If you're walking by, you might look up and see it once, and there's the flag, and you continue on. So I'm just not comfortable with the flag policy, and especially with 3 readings tonight.
Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Josh. Josh, do you have any suggestion of maybe a different approach to this rather than 3 readings this evening? I just want to get your take on this.
Through your worship, and to Councillor Charlton, just for some background on our standard practice as far as what staff would place on the agenda for, first and second or all 3 readings. Generally, we try to reserve 3 readings for items that are either, of a critical urgency, so stuff that can't wait until, the subsequent meeting of council, or items that have already been on a council agenda and sort of deliberated on by council prior to the bylaw stage. So just for some context on this file, the reason that we had placed it on the agenda for 3 readings this evening was because council had reviewed and approved the bylaw as presented at the last meeting of council on May the 3rd. So really up to council as to whether or not they'd like to read the bylaw 3 times or give it first and second reading. But I just thought I'd provide a little bit of background on why it is up for 3 readings this evening, and that is because it's been on the agenda on May 3rd.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Does that answer your question, Councillor Charlton? Is there something you are asking of council? Do you just want to do first and second reading?
No, if council wants to do all 3 readings, that's fine. I would prefer a recorded vote in that case.
Okay, because you do have the option, Councillor Charlton. Like, we certainly could do first and second reading, and that gives people a little bit more opportunity. Are there any other comments from councillors? Councillor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship. I feel that the flag policy is too restrictive concerning veterans and police officers. And that's my opinion only. Thank you.
Councillor Charlton.
So through your worship, if we could just do 2 readings tonight, that would be fine with me.
Okay, so Josh, is there a specific protocol we need to follow? I know it's on our agenda as a 3 readings. Could you guide us through this? And do we have to get the majority of council to agree to change that, or is that necessary?
Certainly, through your worship, if Councillor Charlton wishes to read the bylaw 3321 for a first and second rather than 3 readings, he would just need a seconder on that, and then it would be put to vote by council.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Andrews.
Through your worship, I guess I have a question. If we're looking to only do first and second, usually it's because we're waiting for more information or something is coming forward that would delay that third reading all at once. Is there some information that's being requested of Councillor Charlton that we need to defer 3 readings now?
Okay, I'm not sure. Andy, did you want to answer this?
No, through your worship, I just wanted to comment that certainly for this flag policy could be contentious, and for that reason, it may benefit council not to drag it out for another few weeks. The policy has been presented and approved. In my previous experience is that usually without presenting a reconsideration, now you can't amend the bylaw that's before you, but I'll defer to the clerk on that. But I just think it's just prolonging the inevitable at this point, unless there is a desire to reconsider and reopen the matter entirely.
Thanks, Sandy, because that's my point too. I'm not sure about that. Josh, have you any further information about that?
Through your worship, I would agree with the CAO that I would agree with the CAO on what he said.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Andrews.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment. We've had a flag policy in place and it worked well. I don't think we had, many complaints. It was very representative of the flags and that it represented, and it just, we tightened it up. We made it so that it was similar to other municipalities, something that was more, I guess, a robust policy that, made sense for the community. So I would be in favor of continuing on with the passing of it this evening rather than deferring.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Andrews. The rest of council, okay? Councillor Barber. You're on mute, Councillor Barber.
My apologies. We haven't had any real reason indicated as to why we might want to take another look at the bylaw. And based on what Deputy Mayor Andrews has said, it seems reasonable to proceed at this particular point. Any bylaw can be amended at another time. If there is a glaring error, we can take another look at it. But at least it puts down the basic groundwork of flags and proclamations. Let's get on with it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barber. And that's why I turned it over to the CAO, because he gets more correspondence than we would. And that's why we were looking to find out if there was justification and if there was more information available. Councillor Charlton?
Through your worship, so this bylaw, it's not going to be enacted for a few months. Did I read that correctly? Or is it going to be enacted right away?
I would assume right away. If am I wrong, Josh?
Through your worship, the bylaw would be in effect upon passing of the third reading.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Councillor Charlton, do you want us to do a recorded vote? I know you had mentioned that before.
Yes, I would prefer a recorded vote, please.
Okay, and that's certainly fine. Are you ready for that, Josh? I know you have to have a specific paperwork for that. Are you set?
Certainly, through your worship, though, just for clarity, as Councillor Charlton, are you requesting a recorded vote on the motion before us right now to suspend procedure, or would you like a recorded vote for the bylaw being read 3 times?
Well, the bylaw is going to be read. We're going to pass it on 3 readings, I gather, tonight. So that's fine by me. We just need, no, I'm not, I don't need a recorded vote on the breaking with procedure. It's the bylaw.
Right, and that's the one we're working on right now, is suspending procedural policies, if I'm not mistaken, right, Josh? So are we ready to vote on this particular resolution? Okay, all those in favor? And that's carried. So we'll move on to the next resolution, please.
Certainly, and through your worship, just given the previous discussion that's taken place, we'll just have 2 separate readings for the bylaw 3221 and then the bylaw 3321, with the first bylaw being authorizing the signing of an agreement between the town of Elmer and Duncor Enterprises.
Okay.
So, all right, that council gives 3 readings to bylaw 3221, being a bylaw to authorize the signing of an agreement between the corporation of the town of Elmer and Duncor Enterprises for the provision of a surface treatment services program.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Deputy Mayor Andrews. Are there any questions or concerns about this? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Now we'll move on to the next resolution, please.
That council gives 3 readings to bylaw 3321, being a bylaw to adopt a municipal flag policy and delegate authority to staff under the municipal flag policy.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Oslach. And now I'll leave it to you, Josh, to call the vote, please.
Through your worship, I'll read out the names of members of council, and if members of council could please raise their hands or indicate whether they're in favor or opposed, we'll record it. I will start with Councillor Oslach.
Yes.
Councillor Charlton.
No, I'm opposed.
Councillor Chapman.
Yes.
Councillor Barber.
Yes.
Councillor Ham.
In favor.
Mayor French.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Andrews.
Yes.
Okay,
Certainly,
Thank you,
by
Josh.
vote of 6-1, the motion's carried.
thank you. The next item up is inquiries by members. Councillor Charlton.
Through your worship, I was driving around town today, and it's always puzzled me about the land over near the Centennial Estates Park. I assume that park is in the town of Aylmer, and the surrounding land looks like it's residential land that's never been developed? Or is that part of Malahide Township, or what? Because there's a road that goes through there and that hooks up with the apartment building that they're currently constructing. And there's land on the west side, and most of the land is on the east side. And I just wonder who owns that.
Well, I can tell you the park belongs to the town of Aylmer, and if Andy wants to add to that.
Yeah, just to highlight for council that I believe between Josh and myself, we're dealing with 3 different potential developments off of John Street down in that area. Yeah, there is quite a lot of desire to finish off the Centennial Estates development. I believe there's another 31 or 32 houses there, and there's also 2 condo developments that we're discussing with people in that area as well. So there is going to be a lot of growth in that side of the town in the next 5 years or so.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other inquiries by members? Okay, the next item is statements and committee reports. Councillor Oslach.
Yes, your worship. I see that Earth Corp has put 2 new charging stations on Sydenham Street East parking lot for electric vehicles. I think that came to council a couple of years ago, and I'm applauding this move by Earth Corp.
Yeah, they're great, aren't they, Councillor Oslach? It looks good. And thank you for that comment. Are there any other statements? Okay, seeing none. There is no report of the mayor this evening. Notice of motion? Seeing none. So we'll move into a meeting close to the public. So we'll need the resolution, please.
That council moves into a meeting closed to the public at 8:07 p.m. To discuss the following matters. Item 15.1, CAO report CAO 1621 regarding proposed land sales. Report 2121 from the CAO regarding a properties update. Report clerk 2220 regarding the manager of planning and development position. And finally, item 15.4 report memo from the CAO regarding CAO performance review and objective setting.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Ham. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried, and we'll be moving into closed session shortly.
This conference is no longer being recorded.